Hey, everybody, it's Monday. Time for another Facebook Live. I was going to say, Mike, that, everybody's back from the weekend, but what the freak is a weekend anyway?
I know, right? I consider my weekend just the all end. It's all ending. Everything's ending,
It's the
right?
end of the world, people. And really what's funny about that is like I haven't had a weekend in for because if there's 12 hours of work to do that day, I do 12 hours of work. If there's 3 hours of work that day, I do 3 hours of work. And it's not, and a lot of times I'm pivoting based on, do I want to do more than 3 hours of work today? And if the answer is no, I say, who's going to make me? Because I get to do whatever I want. So I do have to pretend to be working sometimes when my wife comes by my computer, or she'll make me clean things, and so I'm just like tapping as if I'm. But yeah, weekends are not a thing. I'm sort of curious if people are doing the thing with weekends. Why? Why are you doing that? Like where you're working 5 days and you're in this block, and I've seen a lot of logic of you want to keep your work rhythm because it'll screw you up, but like somebody made up those hours. Why are you doing these things?
I found my first weekend experience in months. We decided to go to City of Rocks, which is this like state park close by us on Saturday. And I did not think it would be busy at all. We are just going to drive through, get out, take a little hike. So we pull in, and I've never seen it busier, but no one was from Idaho. I saw license plates from every other state, but not Idaho.
Are you, just as an aside, okay, guys, we're talking about Google things and the internets and such because Mike Ramsey is super smart, but right this second, I don't care about that. Are you guys shut down? Is Idaho shut down?
Well,
Or is it like Utah where like they're giving recommendations, but nothing's officially closed?
yeah, it's like we have more of an official thing that's supposed to open back up, and it's not like a strict stay at home. It's like, hey, avoid unnecessary overnight travel. Here's the businesses that should be open, and like, for instance, Nifty even falls on a business that would be okay to be open because we provide websites, which falls under a certain category for Idaho. So like my town has not stopped at all. Almost every business is considered essential, minus the theaters. The restaurants are all doing like curbside pickup or go in and order and leave. Just you can't dine in.
So weird.
And then like hair salons and different things. But like we're an ag city, and so agriculture, manufacturing, everything's running. And so it's Idaho. Like I'll just give you this as an example. The governor said when he announced like, hey, everybody's take this easy, social distancing, everything else. The first reporter asked him, how are you going to enforce this? And he said, peer pressure. And then they said, so like this won't be enforceable by law. And he's like, I
don't want to say that out loud, but
yeah, exactly.
No.
And so it's been like, it's been quite interesting. Like I'm from a town of 10,000 people. It's a very small community where social distancing has been in practice for ever. Right?
We just live far away from each other. Yeah, I was thinking, I live in suburbia in Kansas, and none of us ever go outside because it's gross out there. And so, like, we could go on a hike somewhere and we would be alone for miles. It's just, Idaho's different.
Generally that's how it's been. But I think because Idaho has a little bit more lax approach to it, people from states that have really, really strict quarantine guidelines are like flocking to Idaho. But what's interesting is still our state parks say, hey, no camping, like no overnight stay. And if you come into Idaho, you're supposed to 14-day quarantine. I promise you this, no one has done. I think we saw probably 25 different state license plates at City of Rocks.
So we're not talking about surviving the apocalypse today. We are talking about internet-y things. But now we have officially burned a few minutes while people jump on. So now we can get to the good juice. Mike Ramsey, for you guys who don't know, is kind of a big deal as mics go. And that's saying something from someone who is kind of a big deal as mics go. I had this, just as an aside. I was at this. I'm such an idiot, right? Like my humor is self-deprecating. Anybody who knows me knows I just make fun of myself all the time. But I was at this conference, at Cleo's conference, and I was standing at the PwC booth because they created a new product called Insights Officer for solos. And this gal Jen, who's in the ATL legal tech whatever with Kim Bennett and Aaron Gerstenzeng, she comes up to me with the three of them are together. And Jen starts coming up to me, and I seriously, I don't know why I said this. She starts talking to me like she knows me, and I go, so do you know who I am? And it was like the most obnoxious. And Ollie from PwC was standing right next to it. He goes, I cannot believe that you just said that. And I was like, I took a second, and then I was like, oh yeah, I'm kind of a big deal, Ollie. I'm not a big deal. Mike Ramsey is a big deal, as Mikes go. And so he knows internet-y things. And so we're going to talk internet-y things. And his session was about Google My Business. And the short version is that you could do Google My Business right and build a whole practice on that and screw everything else, which, of course, is a funny statement from a website guy, from an internet marketing guy. But it's true, man. Go watch the video. It's crazy. So, Mike, I wanted to talk to you. Guys, remember, you can ask questions. You just post them below. Anything you want to know about, like, deep internet stuff, super SEO things of what we should be working on right now. And, like, Mike Ramsey can actually answer the questions and not guess. So, Mike, what I wanted to do while we're waiting for questions is talk about trends. You told me before we started talking that you've got data. You have a bunch of law firm clients. You've got behind-the-curtain data. You're looking at trends in different practice areas. So just nerd out to me.
Nerd out for a little bit. Okay, here we go. Well, so we've been tracking since March, and what we wanted to do is try to take like a baseline of pre-COVID and compare what's happening with like website data and leads and everything else to post-COVID. And the best date that worked for that we found across states, or else it would be too hard. Like every state has their own shutdown time that really had some effect on traffic. But when you look at the nation, it was around March 16th, right? That was when on average, we just saw this massive start to the slowdown that hit across the states. So we looked at traffic, website traffic, all of these other points. And basically what we found on average, let me pull some of this data up here, organic traffic. So this is like free website traffic that people would search for your firm on Google or search for a category like personal injury, lawyer in Houston or something like that. So organic traffic was down across at least our network of sites that we monitor about 28%. And that also translated over to leads, right? So
sorry, say that again.
So down.
Overall data for all practice areas was down
28%.
28%. Okay.
Yeah. And then breaking that into specific categories. So immigration was down like 43%. Criminal defense was down 31%. Bankruptcy was flat, which makes sense overall, right? There was somewhat of a peak of interest around bankruptcy subjects about the time that things started coming out.
Sure.
Personal injury was down 29%. Family law was down 28%.
So you're assuming, because you said something about that's true for leads too. Are you able to? So what we're assuming from that is overall interest is down, therefore presumably funnels are less full, right? Like we're leading to few people getting into the track to become clients.
Fewer people searching. Yeah, and like yes, that would be fair across. Now you've got to look at this. This is organic traffic, so this is across Google specific website data traffic,
right,
comparative to Facebook or something like that, right? So depending on how you're doing it, But one of the things we saw was paid. So for those doing paid ads, the clicks, we saw amount of traffic to paid clicks overall down only 4%. But market share for that clicks and actually leads went up. So market share jumped up 22%. Paid leads are up 10%. And what we're finding, like this is data up through beginning parts of April. And we started seeing bottoms for certain areas of law starting throughout the first 2 weeks in April. and now we're seeing rebound. We should have that data, like as far as all compiled across everything. I'm hoping actually this week. So we'll start putting that out as well and trying to share and just what we're seeing. But the feedback from like the data, as far as I'm concerned, was those who were strictly relying on organic traffic were hurt the worst. And those who continued doing paid ads on Google and on Facebook actually ended up, in some cases, getting more out of their paid advertising for less cost than before, simply because there was still a demand. So let's say overall there was 30% less people searching on Google. Ads take 50% of the clicks, right? So there's lots of search still happening. So organically, your numbers would have stayed the same. So you would have experienced that. But in the ad section, as advertisers began pausing budgets, then you were able to swallow up that budget and still spend as long as you hadn't maxed out that market. So like those folks continued to see pretty decent deal flow.
And I'm wondering if, I mean, this is always true, right? Like that you not all your traffic is great, right? Some of it's garbage. I wonder if something that there's no way for you to know, how much of this kind of traffic now is, if it's more tire kickers or less tire kickers, right? Like if the people who are searching now, even because search volume is down, but click volume is level or higher or whatever, or close to level. I wonder if you're getting people with more intent than you were before.
I think that like it depends on the type of law. So let's take family law, for instance. Okay. Let's say people were calling you for divorces. You had a mass amount of divorces, normal caseloads, everything like that pre-COVID. From talking to a few family lawyers that continue doing advertising, everything else, they were finding a lot more questions around like dealing with issues on where the child's going to be, right. Or different things like that, or like the paychecks that were coming from the government, the stimulus package things, and so my guess is that there's going to be fewer overall cases that fit like immediate needs. Right. There's going to be a lot more questions on those calls. The thing that's hard to know is like where that leads to as this continues to go up.
Which sort of pulls us back, and I mean, I've said this a bunch of times. We had a session with John Tobin on productizing, on turning what you know into something that you can sell, right? And if you're in this, it sounds like, and tell me if this sounds crazy, it sounds like if what you are optimizing your system for is you're going to hire me for a $10,000 divorce tomorrow, you might be in trouble, right? Like the kinds of searches that are leading to that are probably not high. But if you have a $99 product that's we talked with Tom Martin about doing this with a bot, like if you're if you're filling out a form that pre-populates based on answers on a bot and you charge $99 and they go in there and it's getting semi-custom advice about what to do with your custody situation during COVID, you might be doing really well, right? Like you might be able to really pivot that into something immediate.
We had a law firm that we work with. This is the outlier to this data. They started doing pieces on custody laws, and I think it was around Texas as well, that were happening and just quick judgments being made for what to do in those cases. And all of a sudden, they picked up over 20,000 people to their website because of answering those questions. Right now, as far as product, I don't believe that they productized that. They were just giving away information. Right. But
even so, I mean, if you're earning social capital with that, I mean, that's got
amounts. I think they probably took on 3 months worth of normal website traffic in a single week, right, just because they hit a subject that everybody was searching for at that time.
Yeah, this might be a really good time to nurture a pipeline, knowing that it's going to have a 3-month payoff, right? Like knowing that it'll be later when it really comes clear. So I guess the question then, this is something I keep going back and forth on, which is what to do with your money right now. We had a session with Mary Jutton about right now is the time to hoard cash, not toilet paper, right? and that if you're dealing with unsure times, what you really want to do is create as much cash, strengthen your cash position so that whatever happens later down the road, you can pivot quickly. And so that makes me wonder then, where should I put money? And marketing is always the first thing to go, right? It's a highly variable expense. You see this in the people that have pulled out of Google Ads. What would you put into growth right now? Do you think these firms should be thinking about growth? Should they just be sustaining? Where's your mindset on that?
The hard thing about this case in particular is we're dealing with something that we don't have historical data on, right? Like, so we don't know, but we do know, the thing that we do know is going back to other downturns in markets and what's happened from that. And so there's some really great articles. There's a Harvard Business Review article that really dives into the Great Depression and what companies what companies thrived and came out of the Great Depression better compared to those that didn't. And the actual difference was marketing. The companies that continued to build brand during
it was branding.
It was branding.
And that's the thing, like, that's this. We talked with Chris Smith or Chris White about billboards. This is a weird time. It's always a weird time to think about billboards, but if I'm ever paying for a billboard, it might be now. Like what Johnson & Johnson did.
Why would you do a billboard now when the traffic on the roads are down? Like, I mean, across big cities, it's down like crazy.
I get it. Sorry, I'm thinking
digital. But right. I'm saying like digital billboards. Like for instance, like the new billboard of today is Facebook ads, right?
Exactly. More branding activities.
More branding, like building the brand, coming up with different things. So we actually did a piece on Nifty Marketing's blog about COVID that takes the HBR data and showcases a few stories of these companies. And then we go through and say, hey, maybe you do come up with a brand strategy with some ads across some social channels, and you need to decide how you want to go this. Are you going to take a community, proud of community approach? Are you going to take a funny approach? Are you going to take a fear approach? Are you going to take this? But think about cutting advertising. It's self-fulfilling prophecy. If everybody's like, hey, I'm going to hoard as much cash as possible, I'm going to sit this out, and just wait, and we're going to turn off all mentions of us, we're going to pause ads, everything else. Guess what? You've just basically cut off where you were getting leads from. So it is self-fulfilling prophecy. You're not going to get that type of traffic. And so for companies, for instance, like the data that we showed with Facebook and Google ads, those that continued doing Google ads and Facebook ads during COVID continued to get cases from it. They continue to get leads from it. Now, are there, every firm based on what they sell is going to have a different level of measuring quality on those leads and if they fit what they're looking for. But they continued to get cases while those that did not. Why they didn't advertise stopped. So it's not like all of a sudden there's no cases anymore, no divorces, no immigration. Well, maybe there is no immigration for a little bit, but no traffic accidents. It's just that the numbers went down. And what we're seeing in Google Trends is anywhere from 50% on the high end to 4% on the low end, depending on the area of practice. So it's not like it's done. It's just that there's less people, but and that was at the worst. We're already starting to see rebounding in big cities.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I've been thinking about how does this, if they open the movie theaters tomorrow, the movie theaters are not going to bounce back, right? Because people aren't going to suddenly show up and wait in line to go to a movie, and you can't forget 2 weeks ago. I'm really curious with hiring law firms. There's a big question about when the courts open back up. Is that going to be the same kind of scenario as a movie theater? Will we be able to take an influx of cases? Will there be an influx of cases? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, it is. But I think the thing about law that's very different compared to, sitting down in a restaurant or going to a movie theater is it comes out of a need. So what stopped the need? Well, for personal injury, the thing that stopped the need is people aren't outside. They're not getting hurt. They're not getting in car accidents. They're having less experiences. We don't have elective surgeries going on, so there's not malpractice. So once you start rescheduling those things, it just starts picking up. We'll see a slower trend on some of those things. Divorce, there was cases like if you look at other countries, right out of the gate when China started coming back online, they said that there was a huge uptick in amount of divorces because people spent all this time together, right? It led to hard conversations, everything else. And so I think it's very much based on practice area to see what will happen. But I do think it's important for people to look at and see that it's not like all things stopped.
Right.
And even though you're not in court, that only affects certain areas of law. There's still a lot of stuff that's done outside of the courtroom and lots of conversations that happen beforehand.
It's not the demand changed, supply changed, right?
Yeah.
So if you can fix the supply, will the demand show back up? But I will say we've got in this group, and again, you guys feel free to post questions beneath. Mike's a super smart guy, and we can pivot with whatever you got in mind about the interwebs. But we've got a lot of different kinds of people in this group. Some of these firms have money, right? They've got cash flow. They've got a pipeline. They've got to figure it out. Some of these firms are not, they're sole workers that are in the churn that are only as good as their next case, right? This business model that I rail against in the book. And this is chickens coming home to roost. Now there's not this cycle. So they don't have cash sitting around. And making a decision to put $500 into something is a big decision. So let's, thinking of those people separately, what they do have a lot of right now is time.
Yep.
So what if you've got time to invest rather than money, where would you put that time right now?
I think I would put it very, actually.
Sorry,
you've created the Lawyer Forward. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Is
sorry.
this good?
It was just the signal broke up. Tell me what you said you would put time.
I would do something very similar to what you're currently doing with your Lawyer Forward Facebook group. So imagine all of the people who still have legal questions around a specific topic in your city. Mm-hmm. Okay. So why not create a group and you spend your time either for free or minimal cost, building this group and answering questions. And you can spend time doing that. It's super easy. You just hop on Facebook Live or do a Zoom webinar or something else. Facebook just launched their whole, competitor to Zoom. And from that, just start building momentum of being the person that people think about. So answer everybody's questions when it comes to custody, answer everybody's questions when it comes to bankruptcy, or the type of injuries, or if there's going to be, what type of PI claims are going to come out of this, in hospital. Or I know a huge subject right now, one that I'm even looking at is around like our insurance not covering the business loss or something like that, right? There's a ton of legal questions that are still out there. It might not be immediate money, but it's something that you can get your name in on and start being able to, just speak towards.
Yeah, and I've been, talking about that a lot just because I've had this experience with Lawyer Forward and figuring out how to, what to do at this. I've told this story before. We had a couple of projects that were put on hold because companies were in wait-and-see mode. I had a panic attack. We talked about, should I be working at grocery stores? And then I was like, well, I've got an audience. Let me just go out and help them. And you were able to, really focus on building that social capital. We had this conversation with a gal named Jessica, I think yesterday or day before in a Facebook Live. This thing that I'm going to tell you what we're doing right now is I'm using Ecamm for live, and I've just got the camera on my computer. I've got some decent lighting and a decent microphone, but it was an ATR 2100. It costs like $50 or something. And by putting it on Facebook Live, it then spits out to me, do you want to move this over to YouTube? I can move it over to YouTube. It also gives me a video file. I can plug into GarageBand. It'll separate the video and the audio out. I can get the audio transcribed. I can put it on a podcast. My point is, these, like Mike said, these activities like this, you can turn them into, with some time and a tiny bit of technical prowess, into a whole bunch of impact. And that's something I think we can all do right now.
Yeah, there's somebody I got connected with that's a personal injury attorney in New Orleans, right? And she set up this like Louisiana support group for answering legal questions. And all of a sudden, there's thousands and thousands of people in there that are asking questions, and she's built a massive brand in that market, you know. And like, is it turning into PI cases immediately? No, it's building brand that over time will continue to translate into more and more work. And so like, if you have time, that's a great place to spend it. If you have money, you can amplify that, right? Like you can do ads across that. If for instance with like Lawyer Forward, if you had money to put behind Lawyer Forward and really start pushing that out, you could broadcast these videos and hit the entire world of law firms, right? So you just have to look at what you have access to. But the one thing that I would, definitely caution against is shutting off all forms of marketing, right? Like, I don't care whether it's free, you doing it yourself, or you're paying someone. If you stop, then people stop thinking about you. Right. You will. It's self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So you just have to at least find a way to continue to be relevant in front of your audience.
Yeah, I can't remember who we were talking about this with, but I recently looked up my kids pointed it out, that if there's an artist named Michael Whalen, and so he has owned the first page of Google. I'll never beat him. He did the cover art for the Fountain series, the Isaac Asimov series. Like, he's a famous fantasy artist. I'm never going to beat him. But my kids pointed out to me that I am now winning the first page of Google under Mike Whalen, and I'm going to share the screen real quick just to show you guys a point. Like, here on the right, it shows Michael Whalen as an American artist. But if you look at this page, it's LinkedIn, it's my Twitter account, it's a news story about me, it's my website, it's the book, it's, image. Like, I wasn't winning the first page of Google until I had a ton of different media formats and places where I was. And again, with doing things like this, you can like repurpose in a way that you can get there pretty quickly, actually. And I mean, that's a branded search, right? Like, that's my name. That's not, Houston divorce attorney, but the same principles apply. Just go multimedia if you can.
And that's the same approach that this law firm took, the family lawyer, when all of a sudden there's all of these new searches around new content, new subjects. For instance, COVID-19 custody issues, right? Nobody had written that content pre-COVID-19.
Right.
So because he was very quick at getting that done and being able to post it, he picked up literally thousands of people searching from his market and actually beyond. Now, that beyond traffic doesn't really matter because he's never going to service it. But I was just blown away at the fact that since this content did not exist, but there were questions about it, how easy it was for him with relative basic content to get such a high reach.
Well, but on that, this is a Google question for you. Yeah. So usually when we talk about SEO, we're talking about a long game, right? Like, it's going to take a while to get your name to the first page or whatever. But I know Google also promotes recency, right? Like, recency is a thing that they...
Depending on the subject. So it takes a long time to get your website up on the first page for personal injury in Houston, Texas, right? Like, of course, because there's tons of competition. So the base of Google taking time to get something somewhere is based on the amount of competition and authority of other websites. But when you have a brand new subject, right? So basically anything around law and COVID-19, like, it's never been written, meaning there's zero competition. And Google wants to show the most accurate results. And so if you're the first person to write the content, then you're the only thing that will rank.
So, but would you advise somebody, because as soon as you start getting on that round of I'm writing about the latest thing, you have to keep doing it. Would you advise somebody, if I've got 10 hours this week, would you advise them to spend that time writing about things that will have some of that FAQ type evergreen juice, or to focus on let's get some quick wins? or maybe a mix.
I look at it as a mix. For instance, COVID-19 is not this like short-term deal, right? It's becoming something that's probably going to last through the summer. We might have a rebound in the fall. Who knows, right? But there's enough on it that while I wouldn't consider it full evergreen, it's not like normal news that it stops mattering tomorrow, right? So should you be putting some time into content surrounding COVID, like situations in your legal practice around COVID? Of course. And the thing that I saw that a lot of people did wrong as they started doing this, and like this is big firms, right? You'll take these mass firms that immediately went out and create these, you could look at COVID-19 legal resource centers. They have practices with hundreds of lawyers, and they're in 5 practice areas. But when you call it COVID-19 legal resource center, nobody cares. Nobody wants to look at it. They just want their question answered, right? And so like quick wins on like, how is Texas handling child custody cases around COVID-19? Right. Like that's how somebody's going to search. So just do a quick little article on something like that, and you might do 3 or 4 or 5 of those, or based on your state or your city or something like that. And that content is fairly easy to put together and could give you a win for the next month, 2 months. But that's the time that you're most worried about.
Or 2 years.
Well, who knows, right? Yeah, it could be, right? Well, we and then it's nice because you just have to go in and update the dash, and then it'll be called COVID-20 because of the mutation. So, and you'll be the first to have it.
Yay!
So really, like that's how I would look at that. Now, I also see people trying to continue with like an evergreen strategy of content that will always exist. But let's be honest, people aren't necessarily looking for that content right now because it's not the questions that's on their mind.
Can I get you to disagree with me about something that I keep saying? I'm concerned about a lawyer with an SEO strategy that's driven by that lawyer's time, because I feel like right now, even for a long tail search term, Avo has been around long enough that they're going to win. FindLaw has been around.
Maybe on long-term, frequently asked question stuff, they will long-term. But like look at Nifty, for instance. Like we're not a company that goes out and spends a ton of time writing content on our own website. I've always considered it. Hey, unless I can do a very good job at something, it's probably not worth doing because everybody else is going to get there eventually. So like we'll take on a piece that we want to do well, and we might only publish a blog post every quarter.
Right.
But when we do it, we make it good, right? And so from an SEO strategy, why would I do that? Well, one, I'm looking for more immediate hits and something that I can share and that I know will be shareable, but then it could be able to rank because it's done so well and because I put way more time into it than something else. So for instance, that's like more of what I would consider like a skyscraper content strategy. So if one person does a very basic thing and they're not going to continue to pump out tons of basic things, right? All the time, like an Avo or something where they'll just do a quick answer, that's a page, and it'll rank eventually, and so on and so forth. We'll do a big piece that covers all of the things around child custody, for instance, and have it be 1,000, 2,000 words long that just cover every single detail. That's really great for the searcher to be able to go through and see imagery and see every aspect of it, right? We'll code it properly, and as that exists, we can beat out somebody else who doesn't do that simply because the content is better, right?
You're touching on I'm trying. I had a job. I'm not going to say who the job was, but there was an argument with the people in charge about there was this obsession with putting out 300-word blog posts, like let's just sit down and just pump them out, just get a bunch of words. And I'm like, why are you paying me to do this? Go hire a kid in India to do this. This is crazy. Yeah. And what I kept saying was, no, it makes and I was stealing this from HubSpot to be clear, but it was like this skyscraper thing where you do this. Like I was writing 3,500 word blog posts, right? And it was covering everything. And I'm linking to other people's stuff. And then they were going out because I was linking to them. They were sharing my article and linking back to it because I was making them look really smart. There were visuals. There were custom. Like I went crazy with these individual posts, but I was only putting out like one a week, right? Because obviously how the freak would you do more than that for a post that size? And I feel like if I'm advising somebody to do, I would rather see, and I think Google has adjusted to this, and tell me if I'm wrong, I would, in terms of just screw Google, in terms of you making something that matters, I would rather you spend the time making something really good that people will go share and talk about because it's really useful than doing a bunch of these long tail 300-word FAQ posts.
Well, yeah, like I look, let me tell you how I would do that. Yes, for your website, the long tail big piece is exactly right, the skyscraper approach, okay? So do your one big piece on the subject that people care about.
Right.
The place to do the frequently asked question, like more rapid fire, is like Facebook comments, Facebook Live, like on YouTube, all of the social media. Like it's social. It's more of a social approach. Now, if you want to repurpose that for your website, great. But I mean, do a search like on your computer. If you do a search for COVID-19 marketing for law firms, right? Well, we should be, if you do that right now, we should be somewhere on page 1 with a piece around creative marketing ideas for lawyers during COVID-19.
COVID-19, what did you say?
Marketing for law firms.
Marketing for, is that long tail? Is that considered long tail?
I would consider this getting into long tail.
All right, let's see. I'm looking at good to be social is number 1. I don't know who that is. ABA Journal.
Disruptive advertising, and then NIFT, right?
Yeah.
And if you type in different variations, if you type in marketing ideas for lawyers during COVID-19, will be high. And that's more of a natural way to search, right? But like this piece is longer and a little more in depth with examples and different things that we put out fairly early in the ball game on COVID-19, right? And we haven't done any link building or anything particular to this piece other than just put good time into it. But we, this wasn't
it's
that
almost
hard.
Landing pagey, right? Like it looks pretty.
Yeah. We made it nice, right?
But simply building good headings.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Simply building that page, and we've had, I bet we're probably a few thousand people to this page that we can then remarket, retarget, different things like that. And it was fairly straightforward. And the reason we were able to show up is because there was no content around this subject beforehand.
Man, I'm still scrolling. This is, and I feel like maybe I just want you to give me some therapy and tell me I was right about this because I got awfully insecure about it by the end. But I feel a bit like the strategy of, and God, who was it that wrote the book? And now I'm forgetting the company, but it was one of the early content. The Inbound strategy. Like when the book Inbound was written, a lot of those go write a bunch of 300-word posts on bloody everything. Just write something on everything. That was working really well.
Because there was no content.
Yeah, but now it's like, I just don't feel like you're going to beat Avo in your market. I mean,
well, you have to, you just have to look at it and be like, how can I be better than everybody else with the content I'm producing? It's not just write content. It's like, if you're going to play the content game, how can I do something that nobody else is doing and be better at it?
Can I tell you a strategy I was using, and you tell me if this is a good idea or if you would do it differently? And I can't remember. I want to credit people, but I cannot remember where I read this from. But basically, I would go do a search for it. I had a really hard time identifying what search terms I should even. That's a whole other issue, doing that kind of research. But once I figured out a search term that I wanted to come to the top on, I would do that search. And then I would go find the top 10 results. And I would click into each of the results and look at each of their headings. And then I'd pull those headings over into a spreadsheet. And basically, I would write a single document that included more or less every one of those headings. So instead of somebody having to click through those 10 articles to find all these answers, they could go to my article, find all of the answers, and it was just super long. It was just a 3,500 word post. And so those ranked really fast.
Yeah, they can, as long as the content does relate to the overall subject you're trying to go for. So this is a strategy that we've seen done and that works well. Like, take the person that has, let's say they have 1,300 word blog articles. You take all of those and turn it into 30 pages. But it has to be on the major subject. So an example of that is, let's say your personal injury page. You have, well, I don't know. You could have like an overall personal injury page for Houston, and then you have car accident page for Houston, and you have truck accident, go down the list of all of these different things. That's all part of personal injury, right? And so you have to choose where you want this big flagship piece to exist, or what we'd call skyscraper. But if you back up personal injury enough with all of the content around all of these other subjects and make a wonderful page that's easy, it can't just be words, right? People don't want to just read a never-ending document, but like a broken down, beautiful piece of content that's both visually pleasing and then also has a good, skeleton structure of the content to follow along with. You can really boost traffic. So we've seen people drop pages and end up getting sometimes double to triple the traffic by doing so.
Yeah,
right?
And I mean, this was HubSpot's shift that they wrote about quite a bit, was that they had just created a crap ton of articles and they had to restructure their website. So they had a hub and then they had all these other rando articles tie into it. So a lot of it was structural. And I don't know how many in this audience have just a ton of content and it's just about reordering and thinking about it differently. But this is a time, and again, you may totally disagree with this, but this is a time where it used to make sense to do a blog to book type approach, meaning you're making small things and you're doing these little steps and then you put it together into something. Michael Hyatt's book Platform is an example of this, and I love Michael Hyatt, but it's a terrible book because it reads like blog posts put together. I got this from Ryan Holiday. He does the opposite. This is a time, he says, to go from book to blog. Like, do the huge piece. Brene Brown does this really well. Do the big pieces. Make the time, if you're going to spend this next 90 days, instead of just creating a bunch of noise and not getting results, because then you're sad and you feel like you suck and you're a bad person, and doing this marketing stuff is a waste of time, and Mike Ramsey is a liar. But if you go do the big impactful thing, that, as somebody who finally finished my freaking book, I can tell you that trickles down so differently than just making a bunch of noise like everybody else is. The big things have a big impact.
I would hesitate to get people to think that you have to go out and write a full book, like 50,000 words, before it's actually impactful. Sure. Like, we put together a blog, this blog post for our company's approach to COVID-19 as far as written content. We've done a lot of stuff like this. We've been on a lot of shows and other things. Right. But like our written content, this took a couple, I want to say that was a 3-day process, certain amount of research, getting the piece put together, feedback, designing it, everything, getting it up, like it was fairly basic, but that piece is good enough to perform well. Right. So, and it stops being just noise, because it's not that 300 word, it's just fluff. We're trying to rank for keywords. I think the thing for me, I stopped looking at ranking as the most important thing and looking at answering my clients' questions and my audience's questions. When you look at it from that perspective and how they would come, that's basically what Google's trying to emulate with how they rank things. They look for something that would answer people's questions. And to me, like, the more information, the more ways you can look at something, the more data, the more, just complete picture you can give to an answer, the better the answer is, compared to just a 300-word thing. Like, sure, answer the question in 300 words at the top, but then back it all up in the next 1,000, right?
Well, I will say, I mean, this is me making a pivot. There is a place that you can write 300 words, make really small efforts, and it'll have a huge impact just because, again, there's not a lot of competition, and that's Google My Business, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I was going to say, just probably not on your website. You've got to transition at that point to be more over into the social channels or something else.
Right.
So going into Google My Business, like, understand what Google My Business is and what it is not. Currently it's a place for quick information. This is where quick information needs to live. And what information are people looking for when it comes to law firms? Like, what is that quick information? It's not deep, long tail Q&A things per se. They're looking for business information, right? Like, hey, are you open right now? What do you do? Do you work with this type of thing or this type of thing? And there are Q&A questions and answers that exist in Google My Business, and that's a wonderful place for the quick Q&As. Right now, they've actually been removed during COVID because people were just typing over and over and over and over, and the questions, are you open? Are you open? Are you open? Because businesses weren't updating their information and letting people know. So it's like, yeah, be quick in your description, be quick in the Q&A section there. Your website, though, is kind of a different beast.
So let's talk about Google My Business then, because I was thinking about the difference between some quick wins and the habits, the things that you want to change. And I always use the example of, if you download a game app on your phone, within like 30 seconds you get a badge of some kind, right?
Yeah.
Because it wants to give you the feeling like you did something, because that dopamine rush like keeps you on. So I want to distinguish between quick wins you can get on Google My Business and then habits that you want to build up. So what are some quick wins, something that I can go change in 30 minutes that I think will have a measurable impact and help me beat some competition?
So when it comes to Google My Business, the most important things will be consistency of data first and foremost. Having your business name the same across all your directories. Now, if you're looking at like super tactical quick win and you're willing to like pay the price to do this, right now and for the foreseeable future, whatever your business name is in that Google My Business category can actually influence rankings. So let's say you are Mike Whalen family law firm. Then, but really your Google business name says Mike Whalen lawyer or Mike Whalen, then it should be the keyword rich version of that, Mike Whalen family lawyer, if that's your actual DBA or registered with your state bar practice name.
Right.
What we've seen a lot of companies doing recently, law firms, is changing their actual business name to include the type of law that they're doing. Simply so that they can have that in the Google My Business listing, and it increases ranking. It is the fastest way to increase ranking. But if you do it and it's not your business name, and you can either get on the state bar site or somebody can look up a DBA or something like that, then you'll get the listing shut down. So it's like one of these things that you can't mess around with. But if you're willing to follow the practice and do it right, if you're looking for immediate quick win to show up higher, that's probably the fastest win I could give a person.
What an interesting thing, because it's sort of calling back to 10, 15 years ago with Google. Like, you see a bunch of these...
A1 law office.
Exactly, yeah. You see a bunch of these like law firm websites that are like Corpus Christi Family Lawyer for People with Kids.com. There's these super huge long domain names that now are useless, that Google doesn't care.
And on the domain name, that's the case. But when it comes to your actual business name, My Business, it's like we're back to exact match business names mattering. Now, it's not like, hey, you don't want to become the Houston personal injury attorney law firm, right? Like, but having that be part of it, or like the Mike Ramsey personal injury firm, having that personal injury in there really helps to identify what the firm does. That's why I think Google's rewarding that, is because it's so obvious. The other thing that I see that's a super quick win, and this one you can't, hopefully you're not messing up on, is categorization. Google allows you to choose the category of your law firm, and a lot of time lawyers in the primary category will put in lawyer, right? Which is too broad.
Yeah.
It's not their main practice area. So you need to choose what your main practice area is in that primary category, and then feel free to put law firm or other areas that you practice down below that. But if you don't, a lot of times you will immediately have a lower ranking results simply because you're not categorized correctly. So just those two things, like looking at those and making sure you have the right approach to how you're handling that, can go a long ways. The problem is both of them can be spammed. Like you've got to do it above board. If you're going to go out and change a law firm name, like change the name legally, change it with state bar, do what it takes. Now, would I recommend that or not? Honestly, it's up to each lawyer to determine if they're willing to chase Google's algorithm or not. I think it's stupid. I'm not going to change Nifty Marketing's name.
Well, and even, I mean, look, you guys could spend 3 hours this weekend, which whatever a weekend is, you can spend 3 hours this weekend and go treat Google My Business the way you would any directory, in the sense that you're making sure the address is correct and it's the same as all the other stuff. Your hours are updated, your phone number's right, you got a couple pictures of your office. Update your description. Hi, my name is Joe. That stuff that takes 3 hours is going to make a huge difference. But they're trying, if I understand correctly, to get us to habitually update it. What kinds of, let's say you did those basics and got your directory listing right, treated it like you would any other directory listing. What are the things that you think are worth putting the effort in weekly? Would you add more photos each week? Would you add posts, questions and answers, those kinds of things?
So when you look at the weekly activities that are on there, as far as the things that I really think can help, it falls under 3 categories. Pictures is pretty much a one-time deal, right? Like if you go in and do pictures right and videos right, you can have those uploaded on that listing and do a big photo shoot, cover all the categories, everything else, right? So the 3 areas that I would say you need to be in there at least every 2 weeks for: Google Posts, okay, and then Q&A, answering questions, also seeding questions. Now Q&A is not on the listing right now, but it'll come back after Google is up and running again. They'll put it back on the listings, and then reviews. Responding to reviews and monitoring reviews, everything else, that all exists in Google My Business. And so it's like, these are things that are never ending. There's something you have to just bake into your business process and realize that you have to have a plan and strategy around. So Google Posts, Google created a specific COVID-19 spot for updating that right now, and you have to update that every couple weeks. It's a perfect opportunity to share, hey, we're still open. Here's what we're doing. Here's an offer that we're doing during this time, or something like that can be very visible on the listing. The one thing that people don't think about, and that if you watch the full episode that we recorded earlier on Google My Business, right, is, some of our data is showing that for a law firm, potentially anywhere from 30 to 65% of traffic that people searching for your law firm or coming through to a law firm never goes to the law firm website. They basically get what they need on Google My Business and will make the call or just convert right from that listing. So you have to treat it like it is your homepage. You can't just have basic information there. Treat it like a dating profile. Like, would you put, you got to make yourself look really good.
So lie about your weight and your height.
Yeah, lie about all the things, right? Photoshop hair.
I mean, you and I don't have to do that, but no. I understand that other people do.
Because we're big deals,
obviously,
in the category
in
of mics.
The space of mics. So we've got just a few minutes left. I wanted to add a question here that is actually a very broad question that I'm going to ask you to get real narrow on, if you can. And then I want to ask you to help me with my daughter's report that she's working on for school. So Nina Zhang asked the question, how do you know if your blog post or your web presence is successful? What metrics do you use? Again, big question, but quick thoughts on it.
I would say the way to monitor success is different for different purposes, right? Like an easy way is looking at traffic, right? Are you getting traffic, but is that good traffic? So you've got to do some comparison numbers. One, overall traffic to the website, or to individual pages. And then one of the biggest things that we like to monitor is leads and phone calls from the website. And so you can start to see stories from this data, and just keeping it simple. Like if all you looked at was overall traffic, and you can look at that by category, social, and you can look at it by organic, paid, etc. And then leads. The story that starts coming out is this traffic converting, and are we growing traffic? And are we growing conversions, or are we growing traffic but conversions are going down, like leads are coming down? And so if you're doing these blog posts and you're getting tons and tons of traffic, but your lead quality or leads are going down, you probably are not writing the right type of content. So see, that's why just looking at those numbers will start to help you. And then from there, you can start diving in and figuring out issues. But like some people will say, oh, you got to, time on site. This and this and this, but every case and every piece of content is different on what the purpose of that is. Time on site might be 5 seconds, but that is they click on the website, they find your phone number, they call you. Hey, that's perfect, man. That's what I'm wanting, right? So that's why I tend to look at those traffic numbers and lead numbers, and then I'll deep dive based on what I see there.
Yeah, there's a book called 10X Marketing. The guy who created CoSchedule. His approach I really liked was essentially when you start your content efforts, he focused obsessively on traffic. He was doing one metric at a time, and he just focused obsessively on traffic. And
traffic, yeah.
Right. Once that metric was okay, then he started focusing on conversion, like who's clicking through. So he was obsessively focused on the clicks through, and then after that was built, then he focused obsessively on conversions to clients, and he got to the point where he actually didn't care about traffic anymore. That just wasn't a metric. So
all conversion all the time.
I think it really depends on the phase of your growth with this effort.
And that's very fair. But one thing is, you don't need like endless amounts of traffic for a law firm. Right. You need to convert people coming to your website.
You're not selling a $30 a month SaaS with a free base version. You're selling a $10,000 product.
So if you work on any one thing with where you're at now, work with the site visitors who are already coming, and that is conversion. Work on getting them to call, work on getting them to fill out a form or downloading something, giving an email, and just think through all of those processes of what you could do to get them more likely to get in touch with you.
So final question that I expect you to know the answer to because my child's grade depends on it. Why have they not broken up Google, and when are they going to? Like, they own 98% of search. They are functionally the filter of the web. Like, that's crazy.
So Google's story on this is people have the ability to choose a different search engine at any time. Therefore, we are not forcing them into our search engine. That's what they've been able to basically claim. That's kept them, like in comparison to Microsoft, which bundled certain things automatically with Microsoft, whatever it was called back in the day. I don't even remember their operating system. So that's how Google's been able to do that. I'm starting to see people wear out on Google, though, and governments wear out on Google, and just the approaches that they're taking. For instance, I think it was France, just fined Google for unfair practices in news articles. And so they have to start paying publishers for the news stories that they post, right? Now, Google's going to come up with a super crappy way that messes over everybody but them on how they actually implement this. And as they continue to do that over and over, you'll see category-specific things that Google potentially either has to get out of, gets fined on, or maybe broken up. Google puts their their directory, My Business, Google My Business results above Avvo, above Yelp, above all of these things. And this is an area that especially Yelp has tried to fight and fight and fight on. I don't think that fight's done. And so the question, I don't think you'll ever see Google broken up where it's like search engine company and then a separate directory company or something like that. I think you'll see them pay fines.
Well, they got the money for it, and so it's because of us.
And that's really what the governments want more than a broken up is they want the money. And so I have a feeling you'll start seeing these things where they'll just continue to pay fines, but you won't see necessarily different companies come out of it. You won't see Google Maps as a separate company.
Cost of doing business. I appreciate you, Mike Ramsey. And if you guys, well, I'll ask you the question. If people want to reach out to you and get more information on monopolies, you're the no. If people want to learn more about how to use the Google machine, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
niftymarketing.com. Fill out a form, call from there. If they'd like, they can email me directly, mike@niftymarketing.com.
You're a good man, Mike Ramsey. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. And remember, you can continue to post questions below. It just stays in the group. This thing will live forever. So if you guys want to keep talking about how you're using the interwebs, you can do that below. And make sure we've got a session later with Karen Skinner on processes. Look to the left. On the events tab when the other sessions are happening, and make sure you click going so it lets you know, gives you the notifications. Thank you guys. Thank you again, Mike, and we will see you guys later.
Thanks.